Hey, it's pretty cold out there at the moment, isn't it? What treacherous weather we've had lately. But I tell you what, it's been absolutely lovely seeing all those amazing snowmen being built. I'm a regular user of social media and my news feed lately has been full of pictures of the white little men. Some rather weird, but many cute. I've also loved seeing the beautiful white blanket of snow across the country shared in picturesque locations. I want to use this opportunity to say a special thank you and a special well done to all those amazing teachers and parents who have been going through the challenges of homeschooling, home learning lately. It can't be easy under the circumstances, particularly for parents who are looking after the children at home, dealing with the normal household duties, but on top of that, if you're working, dealing with your work or your business duties as well. I just want to say one thing. Just remember, education is not filling a bucket. It's the lighting of a fire. So let's get those fires lit. Let's get warm as we're about to start the next episode of Let's Talk. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Asian Sunday. It's been an absolutely amazing 7 episodes so far, and I just want to thank you all for all the love that you're showering on all the videos and all our guests. They are absolutely super amazing, aren't they? And today I have another super amazing person, and as those of you who know, I'm a very big advocate for women, so it's another female that's on my amazing yellow sofa. Now, this lady, I've not known her very long, but not many people know that her father used to be my form tutor at school. So whatever she needs to know about me, she can pretty much find out. She probably knows more about me than I know about her. So this is where the tables have turned, truly. But she's an absolutely inspiring young woman who's done exceptionally well despite some very, very tough challenges. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Noreen Khan. Hi, Noreen.
That was a build-up. How are you?
Not as much as what you've done. There's so much more that I could have said. But yeah, I'm good, and it's so good to see you. It's been,
likewise.
You know, like we were saying off camera, it's been nearly like a decade, hasn't it?
I think so. I think so. So thank God for social media. It comes in handy because we've kept in touch through there.
Yes, because we might not have met in person, but I feel as if I still have kept in touch with you because we do chat quite a lot via Twitter. But I just want to say thank you so much for this. This is a lovely gift and you shouldn't have, but really lovely. And I absolutely love that logo and NEESIE. Tell us, what is NEESIE then?
Well, the logo, first of all, that's actually the outline of a real photograph from the hospital from when I gave birth.
Really? Is that you?
Yes, it's me and a niece.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So that's when it started in terms of a real story. That's the outline of a real picture.
That's incredible.
The first picture that was taken of us both. The midwife actually took it.
Yeah.
And so then, but at that time, we didn't know all about NEESIE and the organisation. It was many years later, I think about 3.5 years later, after a real tough battle with depression and you know, kind of seeing the other side of life almost. And I think that's the time, Fatima, I really grew up. And I have always said now that no one really turns into an adult until your knees hit the ground. And I think that's really crucial for me during those tough years is when I turned from girl to adult and was a mother at the same time. So then he was about 3.5 and I wanted to start to venture out after my time indoors, many dark days and long nights. And I wanted to go out with him and I wanted him to play in play centres and stuff. And I was just looking for a small group where I could just meet them at, you know, the local play centre and see them once a week and he can have a play about and then just go back home to not knowing what I was going to do. And that soon spiralled then after many trials and tribulations and asking lots of women in play centres and, you know, gym, nursery places, community centres. And I remember once I was in Tesco's on Canal Road, and I was actually kicked out by security because I didn't have a survey badge, and I was talking to women saying, are you a single mum? Are you a single mum? Kind of in a bit of a panic state. And they said, should you be here? And I was like, no, I just want to find some single mums. So that's kind of where it started off. And then I was at a takeaway on Leeds Road, and all I had, I should have brought it with me actually, was a napkin. And I asked the waiter for a pen, and I started drafting a bit of a business plan for an idea of how to get single mums together. And 5 years next week, or 2 weeks' time, and we've now supported well over 4,000 mums in the Bradford city alone.
Wow, 4,000
across many schools, put them into jobs, and in different cities across the UK, and it's phenomenal. We've got satellite offices in 14 countries across the globe, so it's
my goodness,
it's done all right.
And this is the woman who I was trying to convince, very hardly convinced, to come on my show, and she was telling me she hasn't achieved much. 4,000 women, 14 countries. That's incredible.
For me, it's just gone to show that the need is there, Fatima, and I think that's all I was. And I wasn't trying to prove anything.
The need is there, but to be able to reach those people is the challenge, and you've reached them. You've reached thousands.
I think because when you've been there, when you know hardship, not from an ivory tower or not from a book, I think it makes a difference. I had those days where, I sacrificed a lot to ensure that Anis had his powder milk. I sacrificed a lot, my entire social circle who I once upon a time knew. And when I needed them, Fatima, there was nobody there. And I think you learn a lot at that time, because when you have a platform and when you have a reputation and when you have position, everyone's with you. But when you no longer have that, it's those who are with you that are your strength. And that strength is very little at that time because there's very few people with you. And that was the biggest lesson in my life, that, when you're doing okay, it's not always necessary that those people around you will be with you forever.
Tough lessons.
Very, very tough lessons for me. But it made it nicer as well. It gave me a lot more space for me, and for me to have that time on my own. And I do like my times on my own. I love my own company. Anis thinks I'm an absolute, loner, and that I'm really sad that I like to spend time on my own. But according to him, I'm kind of prehistoric and a dinosaur anyway. So, no, I love spending time, obviously with him. But sometimes when it gets a bit much, I'll go to Foster Square car park and get myself a cheeky fisher fillet and sit under the double M and sit on my own and have a quiet dinner. But yeah, no, I think it's been wonderful. It's been a good journey.
Yeah,
it's been a tough journey.
Yeah,
but now I think because I've grown into my own,
I
kind of don't depend on anybody anymore.
So how long has NEESIE been established?
February 2016 was when we went live first.
So you're going to be, what,
5 years? That's right, 5 years in Feb. And I, like I said, I did not expect it. All good
things are born in February, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll mark that down. We'll have a joint birthday. But yeah, as I said at the beginning, I genuinely just expected it to be a group of single mums. We'll meet down at a play centre. We'll have a little play, a cup of tea, and we go home. I saw myself maybe something in an easier job, maybe like a call centre or something where I've got that flexi time. So I'll be there for a niece and I'll get to do my own kind of stuff. But this just took a turn. It took an immense turn, and the demand was phenomenal. The support strategically, maybe not as much, because it's very hard, to break in to a new arena. I'd never been involved in the voluntary sector before. I didn't really know how all the streams worked. I'd always been on the other side, whether it was policy writing, strategic alignment, transformational change. Those were the kind of lines I was dealing with. Bank mergers, voluntary sector really wasn't me. So to suddenly find myself in the thick of it and looking at all this partnership, working on the ground and having to find your funding, that was really tough. That still is really tough. But you learn a lot along the way. You become quite resilient. And that's what I've learned.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. Well, congratulations on 5 years.
Thank you.
February this month, obviously. So that's an amazing achievement. Just out of interest, what does NEESIE stand for? What
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that. And
Yeah.
I've said this a few times, but people tend to call it Nessie.
Okay.
Because they think I'm the Loch Ness Monster, because I'm Scottish. I can reassure you I'm not the monster, anybody.
No,
But
and if you are, you're a beautiful one.
Anise wouldn't say so. But yeah, no, it's NEESIE. And NEESIE is actually just the nickname of Anise, and I've always called him NEESIE.
Ah, okay.
So ultimately, I just wanted to ensure that my NEESIE didn't feel like he was the only child from a single parent household growing up in the community. And then when you're coming from a BAME background as well, you've got double the hardship anyway. You know, you always have to work harder to do anything just because you come from an ethnic minority. So NEESIE was, I was thinking, you know, what do I call this movement? And the movement was just purely that for selfishly, my boy's sake. I wanted him to know that it's okay to come from a single parent background. You know, every household has a different dynamic. And our household is that there is a mum, there is a dad, who are my parents. Then there is a mama, who's me. And then there is a niece, the grandchild of the house.
Yeah.
And he calls my parents mum and dad. And sometimes he calls me Nori out in public, which is great for street cred because then no one thinks I've got a son. So, you know, it works well. And he's accepted, you know, that Nana is his dad. And that's okay for him.
Yeah.
He's fine with that. And, you know, he's given all the essentials that he needs. He's not missing out on anything whatsoever. So for us, it's the norm because he was born into a single parent household.
Yeah.
You know, I was expecting at the time when there was a marriage breakdown and this has been normal for him. So absolutely fine.
Yeah. Amazing. Let's talk about your earlier life then. I mean, obviously, for those people who don't know you, you know, like you said, voluntary sector was brand new. But prior to that, you mentioned loads of big things. Again, you've achieved so much that you were involved in. And obviously, we're talking about your accent as well. So clearly, that's not a Bradford accent, is it?
Only just.
So it's got a bit of, but I think there is a little bit of Bradford mixed with a bit of a Scottish accent now. So that makes you really unique. But tell us about your roots. Where were you born and what was your early life like?
So I was born in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And then, and that was a wonderful time in the 80s. You know, I know racism was rife up in Scotland in those days, but genuinely, Fatima, as a family, we never suffered any racism whatsoever. Whether that was because of, you know, educated parents working or something like that, I'm not sure what the reasons were. But touch wood, we were never victim to any hate or discrimination. After a period of time in Glasgow, then we went down to Brighton.
Oh, wow.
My father got transferred.
Quite a
yeah,
journey, isn't
yeah,
it?
we've been up and down the motorway a few times, I must say. So then we settled in Brighton. For a few years, early education was in Brighton. And then I think it was in the early 90s, my father got a phone call from his sister, who unfortunately, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she really wanted her brother close by to help with treatment, etc. Because her dad's brother-in-law was quite busy with work and fending for the family. So naturally, as any family would, Dad was like, okay, in the car, we're going up north again. This time we stop in the middle. And the plan was always to return to Brighton once, you know, my aunt was better. But unfortunately, I think in 95 or 96, she lost her battle. But by that time, Mum had really got her feet in the ground with Bradford, because we'd always been on a more western side of things, and she didn't have access to all the, you know, the Cannon Mills and the halal butchers as much as you do in Bradford.
The culture's just phenomenal.
Absolutely, and the array, you know, the choices you have. So with that in mind, then Mum kind of just said, no, you know, we're staying. And we were in schools and stuff by then.
Thank you,
anyway.
Auntie, by the way. Thank you for staying.
Shout out to Mum. So yeah, we stayed in Bradford and we were in schools and things. And as you mentioned, you know, Dad was in education, you know, he was a prominent figure in Bradford. And so it made it really difficult for me when I was 16, after I'd done my GCSEs, and I had to be the rebel, and I was the one that went to Dad and said,
Noreen, you, rebel?
well, you know, looks could be deceiving. I said, I don't want to carry on with my A-levels. So it was like, oh my goodness me, you know.
Yeah, because I remember your father used to be my form teacher, and he was always encouraging me after I'd done my GCSEs, you need to go on to year levels. So I can imagine what it must have been like for you.
Tough conversations, let me tell you. I didn't have any nails left. But yeah, so I kind of said to him, and so Dad kind of thought I was just having a phase, and that, you know, just give her a summer holiday, a summer work, and she'll get over it, and she'll say herself that she wants to go back to doing her A levels. And I got a job in a call centre at the time. It was just like these car insurance and travel insurance and whatnot. So I was just doing that, but within 7 months, Fatima, I'd done so well in this job that I got promoted to you know, kind of the floor manager. And I was, what, 16 and a half, 17?
Yeah. So you're rich.
So I definitely wasn't rich. You're surviving off 20p bonuses, but it was more about the fact that I had that impetus that, you know, okay, now I know I can do something. This is for me. So I continued in that, and then Dad soon started to realise that, okay, you know what, she wants to work. She's a practical girl.
Yeah.
So then I started building up from there. I entered the world of banking. Again, back in the days, it was really well. And there was a merger taking place between Abbey National and Santander at the time. That's when it kind of crossed over. And I was lucky enough to have been sent over to Santander to be part of the merger team.
Wow, historic.
It was an incredible experience. And then went down to Milton Keynes, spent quite a while there. And when you're only, you know, 21, 22, and you're part of an international merger team, and you're kind of doing focus groups, you know, for everyone, you're gathering data, you're analysing it, you're data mining. It's a phenomenal experience, and you're living away from home. You know, they put you up in a hotel, and when you're 21, that's grand. They give you a company car. Life's great, you know. And then soon after that, then I started doing some volunteering for an education organisation, because as part of CSR in the bank, then you get some time to do that. So I started doing that, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the regional manager who was leaving at the time, they contacted me to say, look, you know, she's moving on. Would you leave banking and enter this field? So sat down with Dad, and he was like, don't ask me. You made your decisions. You go ahead and carry on with it. So yeah, then I went into the field of education, and then developed onwards and upwards through there. Then went on into a school. Head of enterprise and community relations, working with the Specialist Schools Academies Trust at the time. And they had a lot of funding back in the day, so it was really, you had, you know, a lot of ammunition to get on with the community work. And then we piloted a project for under the banner of the Prince's Charities, and then that did really well. And as such, then kind of just I took a break after that. You know, personal circumstances changed, and then I didn't work after that for a long time.
So let me get this right. You decided to leave education. You didn't want to pursue career. Your dad wanted you to be in education, so he must have prayed hard because you ended up in an industry, in the field.
Right and me wrong. This is not going to go well at home.
There's a little bit of bias there, just a little. So that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite phenomenal that I did end up being within that same field. And even now, even through what we're doing in our work streams, you know, education is a big part of what we do. We've been Ofsted recognised for, you know, having a 100% track record in attainment and achievement levels of the children from supporting the single mothers of those households. So kind of in a way, I guess it's you know, roundabout. It's all about education. And just only in the last 3 or 4 years, and I went back to university, and I got my degree as well.
Oh, wow.
So I did night classes while Anis was still doing his 7 p.m. bedtimes. So I thought that's when I can slip out and go to college and do my bit and then come back.
Mr. Khan, that's what I know him as. Uncle must be so proud.
It was a nice moment for Mum and Dad to be at my graduation, but as much as it was so wonderful to have them, it was special to have my son with me.
Oh,
I think, you know, I always want, and prior, like I said, I left at 16 because education wasn't my focus. But until I didn't have him in my arms, Fatima, at that point, then I kind of said, you know, even if it's for aesthetics purpose, I've got to make sure that picture is on the wall because he's got to aspire to that too. So forget about being the role model outside of my 4 walls. I had to be that role model at home.
You certainly do wear a cape. You certainly definitely do, especially for your son. I think he's going to see that for sure.
It is my world. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that. And people must get so sick of the tweets and stuff that I'm constantly putting about him. But he is just the quirkiest person I've
Yeah.
ever known.
Yeah.
You know, he's far more intelligent than I'll ever be. And he's just so fun with it. And it keeps me going. He really does.
Yeah.
So for that purpose, I'll certainly go out of my way to make sure I'll do whatever I can.
Yeah. What I find really inspiring about your journey, Noreen, and I've obviously seen snippets of this, is you married somebody that was exceptionally famous, you know, a huge professional in his field, and he had attention everywhere. But when things broke down, you never clung on to that or utilized some of that to make your way in life. You chose to completely separate that, detach yourself from it, and stand on your own and achieve everything that you have. And the name that you've achieved, 14 countries, for example, so you're a global phenomenon already, by yourself. What gave you the strength and determination and motivation to choose that path?
It's interesting because, you know, no one should ever be associated for, you know, the person that they married or anything like that. You know, good luck to him and his future, and good luck to me and my future. That was a period in the life that, you know, some things work, some things don't work. You know, I'm not the first that a marriage hasn't worked for, and I certainly won't be the last. But I think I've always been very much, like I said, I started on my own at 16.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, if I was going to rebuild on my own, but I think more so because I had a niece, you know, and I had
But
to
it would have
make
been
sure.
easier for you. It would you know, you would have been able to easily do a lot more things, maybe.
I guess maybe
because there was
that's-
something already there. But you chose to go and take the challenging route and chose to want to do it for you and for your son, rather than for you connected with your son's father and then do it that way. So you could have taken the easy path, but you didn't.
I don't think that would have been as easy, to be
you not
honest.
think?
No, I don't think, because, you know, it depends what your benchmark of famous or fame or success is.
Yeah.
And if you're not a nice person, it doesn't matter how much success or fame you have. It really won't make a difference. Whereas I'd rather, you know, stay as poor as I am, but just be a nice person.
Good point.
You know, so
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever, I never wanted that to be the basis of any success, because it would be a very poor platform to stand on.
Yeah.
So I'd rather, you know, dig myself.
So for
quite
you, the
deep.
success was more about the ethics, the principles.
Moral, absolutely.
Morality,
Yeah,
yeah.
certainly. I have a very strong moral compass, and I stand by that, which is why, you know, did I not have that, I think maybe with it 5 years on, I could have been a lot more successful. NEESIE could have been greater. It could have been, you know, better resourced. But out of principle, you know, there are certain funds I will not accept. There are, and this is not, you know, from a faith perspective, anything. It's just how it's dealt with. You know, you get gatekeepers, you get pawns in place, and I won't succumb to that at all. And that's where my moral compass will remain very strong. And do you know, Fatima, ultimately it's the voluntary sector.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work tomorrow, the doors close and I go back to finding another job. We're not short of jobs. I mean, within the Bradford district alone, it's phenomenal. There's always great jobs going, you know, and it depends what level you're looking at and how much time you're willing to give. And I've never ever set out to say that, you know, NEESIE is for the rest of my life. I just want it to do as well as it can for as long as it can. But if I have to job hunt tomorrow, I'll be knocking on your door for a start. But
Anytime.
But the reality of it is, you know, it will last for as long as its given time is.
Yeah.
And then I'll move on and do something else, you know, if necessary, whether it's in Bradford, whether it's outside of Bradford. You know, I definitely, as much as I'm a huge Bradvocate, I do believe, you know, that the world's a lovely big place and there's space for everyone.
Yeah.
And there's lots of opportunities out there, and I'll keep on grabbing whatever I can.
Super. Now, you mentioned you're a Bradford. Your mum obviously was the reason why you ended up staying, because she loved the place. What attracts you to this city? What do you like about this place?
Do you know, Bradford is such a pretty city. It truly is a pretty city. And when you try to say that to someone who's not from Bradford, and when their visuals has only been the back-to-back terrace, you know, the gullies of some postcodes, or, you know, a picture taken on the day where there's been terrible weather, so the bins haven't been collected. That's not a picture of Bradford whatsoever. You know, just when we had the snow a couple of weeks ago, me and the little one were walking through Heaton Woods. I mean, that's like something out of a postcard. And, you know, there is so much beauty to Bradford. Unfortunately, where it gets its bad reputation is because of a cluster of people who like to, you know, spread that hate. And you're going to get that everywhere, you know. But I feel comfortable here. I learnt to drive here. I know my way around here. I have my favourite shops. I have my favourite restaurant. Well, nearly every restaurant's my favourite, but I have favourite eateries. So, you know, there's so much to Bradford that I like. And ultimately, because my mum likes it, and my mum will never move from Bradford, my mum's here, so I will never leave here. You know, and I think that's when you have a root cause, that you know you'll never leave from. I've lived in many different places, national and international, but there's always a pull back to Bradford. There's always a pull back to it. And I think that especially more so in the last 5 to 6 years as well, there's been an immense trajectory of the success and the publicity of Bradford, the running of Bradford. And I think your female leadership has a big part to play about this. You know, and you can compare lots of different cities and countries. Look at New Zealand, the first thing it's recognised for is its female leadership. And people sometimes laugh at me when I use this analogy of Bradford versus New Zealand. But, you know, it's ultimately down to the female leadership. We've got so much to be proud of in the last 6 or 7 years alone. That it's got something to say for itself. A lot of these, you know, VCS organisations that are run by women. I'm not a strong feminist. I'm not going to start breaking walls down or anything like that. But I do believe there's a lot of research that needs to, you know, be done within this to kind of prove that theory that, you know, when you've got a woman in power, better things are done with stronger moral.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I agree, and I'm a definite advocate for women, for sure. So those are the good things about Bradford. What would you say that Bradford could improve on? Obviously, there's always room for improvement.
How long is this again?
But if you were to say one main thing that Bradford should really get right, what do you think that is and should be?
Unfortunately, some of the decision makers that are in place, and I don't say this as a political statement. I'm apolitical, okay, and I've said that, and everybody knows that, and it's really hard. But what I find very unique to Bradford is if you align, or and I don't mean politically, but if you side or if you agree with any comment that a Tory may make, the far left will go screaming at you. If you go for the left, no one from the right will say anything. And then if you don't say anything at all, you're left in limbo because, well, you don't side with anybody. We don't know where to place you. And it's very difficult when a city is so strong in its political alignment that there's very little space if you're apolitical. And, you know, I've always made a point about saying that I will never read a constitution of any of the parties because I don't want that bias. I don't want to have something in my mind to say, well, okay, I'm not going to go with what you're saying because your constitution says X, Y, and Z. And I talk of constitutions, there's probably 40, 50% of politically aligned people in Bradford who have never read the constitution of the parties.
I was just going to say that. They probably don't read them anyway.
well, this is it. So it's very, very difficult because, I mean, in terms of the MPs, I have a lot of respect for whether they've done for me or not. I mean, I absolutely believe they will do whatever they can if you reach out to them. But, you know, I haven't had the major need. But the one MP who has always supported me is probably one of the most disliked and is always attacked left, right and centre. And I remember a time when he was accused of being a racist and a sexist. And if NEESIE is anywhere, you know, on a political platform or being recognised and accepting our emotions, it's because of this one man. And I'm thinking, how can you accuse him of being a racist and a sexist? It's like literally, hello. You know, I'm not quite sure. So I think fact checking is very important before accusing. And, you know, that will always stick in my head. And I remember there was a fair few interviews that happened during the month that then I came out very vocal. I'm not even sure if he knows about this, but I was there every day saying, how dare you call him a sexist and a racist, because why would he be...
I think I remember the tweets. I know
Do
what you're talking about, yeah.
It kind of astounded me, and this is somebody who's apolitical, and he knows that. You know, I don't align myself with the Tory party, nor do I align myself with the Labour Party. So in terms of the MPs, utmost respect for all of them. Where I've needed them, they've been there for me.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Yeah. So would you say what you're trying to say is one of the things about Bradford is we're too emotional, maybe?
Do you know, emotions are okay.
Yeah.
It's how that's dealt with, because there's no middle ground, unfortunately, with politically aligned people. You either love or you hate. You can't just be in the middle.
Yeah.
And if you don't openly support one, they'll all jump on you. And it's like, for goodness sake, I didn't say anything, you know? And I found it more comfortable being apolitical. But again, it's a very hard space to live within when you're in such a strong politically aligned city. And, you know, and in terms of councillors, I honestly, hand on heart, other than one councillor who comes to mind, I don't think I don't know anyone. I mean, there was one, I'll probably choke up if I mention him, because he was so wonderful. And he's just recently passed, Councillor Abid Hussain. Fatima, he did a lot for us. He was a lovely man. And so other than him and a wonderful councillor who I've only just recently had the pleasure of kind of having a bit of dealing with is Councillor Anila. A great one. Other than that, I wouldn't even know who my local councillor is, and it just kind of goes to show that maybe the footprint hasn't been there as much. You know, we've lived in our address for 20 odd years and never any engagement. But yes, that's what I mean. You know, we don't really. Sorry, I got a bit emotional there.
That's all right.
But yeah. So that's you're saying in terms of what's not so good in Bradford. I'd say the fact that if you're not politically aligned, you are ousted, because you've got to be one or the other. And if you're one, you've got the majority, and if you're other, you are the minority, and you're ousted quite strongly. So that's the only thing I'd say.
That's an interesting take, actually, because normally you're put in a majority or minority situation based on your ethnicity, your race, or your class even.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've heard it being described on a political level. So it's a really interesting
I've
analogy.
never felt it other than from a political perspective ever. I mean, obviously, you know, personally, maybe a bit more so because of being a single mother. You certainly see who's got their biases. I mean, your own friends can, you know, they won't invite you to weddings because you're seen as the bad luck token, you know, and I've been bitten by that twice.
Really?
Absolutely. So one very recently. So it's very, as much as, you know, they'll be around you and they'll be very
I want to hear more about this bad luck token story now. Now that you said it, we need to talk about this. So what happened?
No, it's interesting because, you know, as much as, you know, people be around you, so it's fine, don't worry about it and stuff like that. But when it comes to their own situations, you know, when they realise that, you know, some good is happening, if you have been through hardship yourself, and if you come under a category like vulnerable or single mum or something like that, you know, they're all there for you when you're down and when you're sad and stuff. But when the good times come, and one particular, you know, and I still, you know, I'll love her to the day I die. But it's just unfortunate that, you know, when it was time for her happiness, her hushi, as I would say, when it was that time to come, I wasn't part of that. And it makes you wonder, why is it okay that I'm part of your sadness and you're part of my sadness and we're there to share tears, but I want to, you know, break a cracker with you too, you know.
Be there for your happiness.
And I think that ultimately comes down because, you know, oh, she's a single mom, what if it brings a bit of bad luck, or, you know, what
so
people
these
say.
taboos still exist then today?
Oh, for sure. And, you know, before NEESIE started, I remember being in the Kirkgate Centre and I had an ace in a pram, and this random woman who probably knows mum from somewhere, and she came up to me and she goes, oh, beta, you're a single mum now, aren't you? Nene, you should stay indoors because you're manhoos. And I remember phoning my dad and asking him, Dad, what does manhoos mean? Yeah. And he goes, beta, who said that to you? And I said, no, just what does it mean? He goes, oh, it means bad luck. And I thought to myself, you know, we're in the 21st century. And we've still got people thinking because you're a single mum,
You're bad luck.
you're bad luck. So then, and you realise it over time, you know.
Listen, guys, she's in 14 countries. That's not bad luck. Not bad luck.
You know, I mean, as I said, I don't know. It's really interesting that, and it does, you know, as much, even in affluent circles, and it doesn't matter what your social circle is, what your class is, people have a belief system, and you're never going to change that. Okay, you know, that is there, and that's the prerogative. That's what they want to have. But for anyone to say that those mindsets have been eradicated, it absolutely hasn't been eradicated. We see it and live it every day.
And do you see that a lot with the women that you're supporting through NEESIE as well? Do they get a lot of this?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm one of the lucky ones where I come from an educated, very, you know, Western mindset, you know, developed family. But for those who don't come from that, it's very, very hard on the ground, you know, to hear some of the stories, you know, behind closed doors. It's very difficult. I mean, you're dealing with some households where I remember back from the days, well before I had a niece, but when I was working in the education field in a postcode in Bradford, and I remember going into a household and there was this red tape down the middle of the living room. And I thought maybe the kids were playing a game or something like that. And me being me, I had to ask them at the end, and I said, "Oh, Auntie, can I just ask what this red tape down the middle of the living room is for?" "Oh, beta, the men sit on one side of the room and the women sit on the other side of the room in their own living room." Wow. And I learned a lot that day, that evening. And it was a PCSO walk type thing we had to do as part of the community engagement stuff. So I was with a couple of PCSOs, and I remember saying to them, "That's a bit extreme." So, and then there was obviously sons and daughters in the house. And I said, "Oh, obviously it won't be between the brothers and sisters." "Oh, no, beta. The girls sit on one side and the boys sit on one side."
Even with the younger ones?
Even their own family members. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about cultures and mindsets and how you cannot just, you know, put the brush over and say everyone. There are reasons people are like that, and they do those kind of things. And, you know, that'll be generational. That'll be all they know. And it's not for us to go into that house and say, "Don't do that." You can't tell someone how to live in their own four walls. But it's about how do we adapt to things like that when they're going on? How do we adapt our training to ensure that, you know, the recipients will benefit from it, and what are the long-term advantages for that family by giving them some relevant training in a sensitive manner in which they can all grow from. So it was from those kind of little things that I saw, and maybe I was more naive because I wasn't from Bradford, so maybe there was more in-depth things that were happening that maybe didn't happen in Glasgow and Brighton back in those days. So learning these kind of cultures was very interesting for me because, again, people assume they say, "Oh, you're Pakistani, you should know these things." Well, I didn't. I mean, I didn't even wear shalwar kameez until I was about 18 or 19 years old. I couldn't speak a word of Urdu until my dad took me to Pakistan. And I know he was an Urdu teacher, and I still can't read or write Urdu.
I'm just going to say.
This interview's not going well, is it? All my flaws are coming out. But yeah, it was quite interesting. So, you know, I learned all that. The more I spent time in Bradford, the more about my own culture I learned. And I will forever be indebted to Bradford for that.
Fantastic. So NEESIE obviously does quite a lot of phenomenal work, especially, you know, when you're trying to break these taboos, break these cultures that are impacting on women, you know, such as yourself and all the other women that are part of the organisation. How can women get involved, firstly? And my second question is, how can other people support the organisation as well?
Okay, so in terms of the women getting involved, we take a lot of the referrals from schools. And our bread and butter of what we do in NEESIE predominantly comes from our parental engagement programmes that we sell to the schools. So that's where we've been hit most hard, is since the lockdown happened last March. As an organisation, we've felt the pinch badly because we do not have that income stream to keep going, whereas our demand for our services has increased because obviously domestic violence cases have gone through the roof, the support needed. You know, we've got some great partners that we pass on referrals to and stuff, but still that ultimate direct support that's needed. I've lost staff over the last year. So it's been very, very difficult. So whilst we've we don't have any of those mainstream school support running. We've been trying to do things online or as on the phone as much as possible to support the single mums. But when you don't have the financial resources to get more laptops or to get them access to the Wi-Fi so you can do that interaction with them, carry on with that, or the staff to handle the phones, that's where we've seen the hardest side. So I think one element of us, even as a board, just recently we've been talking on a serious level about the future of some arms of our services. And I think we may have to start disabling some services because we simply cannot afford it anymore. So if the main one of what we started for cannot continue because we are not aptly resourced for it, I think that's going to be one of our first amputees, is going to be our direct line services. But what we were doing is that emotional and economical support predominantly. So it's your mental health and well-being. You do the assessments, and then once you've worked with them for a few weeks, then you pass them on to the professionals if they're still needed. And the general part of a society, so they're not so socially isolated, and a general connection with other single mothers. So the numbers we have are so vast that we physically cannot handhold them all. So we do mother mentoring, which means that once a mother has been through our framework, they're able to then handhold a newcomer coming in who's a vulnerable one. So they can start supporting each other, and then they make friends for life because they know their situations and they've been there. So that's worked really well for us. But to continue that model going forward, I can't see it going past, unless there's a miracle, and we are granted some funding to keep that going. But otherwise, that will be our first victim. So how we've tried to kind of develop on through that, everything we offer as an organisation is a mother-led initiative, which means it's an idea brought by the mothers themselves. So we have lots of cohort little groups and stuff and focus groups. So if a mother feels that there's a certain issue in their community or facing their families, that's what we discuss. Like last year, 2 years ago, there was the increase in knife crime and gun crime. So they said they're really worried, and they're worried for their children, understandably. So we created the anti-knife programme, and that was a social action programme involving students from across the Bradford district. And ultimately, they created the UK's first ever anti-knife crime app. It's a live app available to download both on Android and Apple. And that's an information portal that was funded by the Home Office. And what we're hoping to do eventually is turn that into a reporting tool. Which means that any child who has this app, if they see something somewhere, they're able to report it online and get the services and the help that they need immediately. So we're hoping if that can go about. So again, that was a mother-led initiative, and now we're running the COVID leadership programme. And again, that came from the mothers during the lockdown, Fatima, and they were calling us tenfold saying, we're worried about these myths and misconceptions, and we don't know what to believe and what not to believe.
So much going out there, isn't there?
Absolutely. And it's again, it's down to the belief system. If they absolutely are not going to accept it, then there's nothing that you can do or say that's going to do that. But where we can, it's the hesitant ones, because they're only fearful because they don't have enough information. So it's about getting the information directly to them. But it's not always going to work if it's me or you. Sometimes it is the younger ones, because as far as the older generation concerned, they're the ones that are in school. They're the ones that have got the books and the university students. So they're more likely to listen to the young people of Bradford, which are phenomenal. The talent that we have in this district is just unbelievable. So that's where then that programme arose from. So we're always doing anything that is coming in from the mothers themselves. And we found that's worked so far. So if our way forward is to carry on with leadership programmes and to do the social actions, if that's what's working and that's the demand out there, then we'll action that.
Brilliant. Well, I just want to wish you all the best with it. 5 years. This month, so that is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And may you have even more years to come, and keep being amazing, keep being inspiring. And Anise, this is for you. You must be really, really happy with your mummy. She's definitely a superwoman, isn't she? Noreen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for allowing me to have a spot on this amazing platform. Thank you.
Anytime. All the best.
Thank you.